Welcome to It's Meaningless. This is the podcast for startup entrepreneurs who are tired of stuck, who are ready to face the brutal truth. Here we uncover the meaningless daily habits that keep you from protecting and growing in your business and in life. This is what are we doing today? When it hits the fan. When it hits the fan. When it hits the fan. Um, so I had an idea on this one. Effectively, like, let's just say surprises come up all the time in business and in life, just things that we didn't expect. They don't go the way that we want them to go. And I've heard in multiple situations that um, something to the effect of like how you respond um, in situations like this is kind of like it's an indication of who you are. Um, and I think there's some truth to that. Um, I think there's some truth to that because it's like it's the extremes that seem to bring out like what's really inside of us. Um, like I'm just like right now I'm thinking like people say like when you get drunk like whatever comes out that's you. Um, and so it would stand to reason that when things aren't going the way you particularly want them to go, in other words, when you're in, at least in your mind, like whatever it is, whatever impetus it is for you, when you're in crisis mode, um, whatever comes out during that time is like, is what's really inside of you. So I guess the thing is, it's just because that is what's inside of you doesn't mean like the way that we respond in those situations is the best way to respond. In other words, it doesn't mean that's a productive way to respond. Because in other words, the topic here is how do we do how do we operate in a way that's like most conducive for growing a business, for protecting our businesses, um, or growing and protecting in life. And like if you hadn't figured out by now, like the two are they're they're pretty they're pretty intertwined. Um, like it's hard to separate us as people from the businesses we run. Don't get me wrong, like there is a line of separation, there is demarcation, but in terms of performance, like you can't be like, oh, I'm gonna underperform on me and as a person in my personal life and overperform in business. Like it doesn't work. Um, there are hacks that you can do for short term. Um, so like if you're maybe an interim CEO, maybe that can work. But if you're the owner, that's not a it's not a viable long term strategy. Um, so anyway, back to when it hits the fan. So I'm thinking of a situation. Um, um, I'm just going to tell a story. I don't know what it has to do with this. Well, I kind of do, but um, we'll see what comes out of it. Anyway, so a long time ago, I was working for a client. Um, this is before I started my business, but I was working as a consultant, and one of the things that I was responsible for, at least in part, was some of the network stuff for a client. And this was actually my was within the first few months on this particular job. And I made a mistake. I made a big mistake. Um, and I made a mistake. Effectively, the mistake it cost the network. Well, it didn't. Well, it took down the network. It didn't cost it like forever, but it took down the whole company's network, which like you gotta know like that's a big deal. Um, so um, the problem is like I did it. I didn't even know what I was doing. Um, and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know like the result of what I did until like I walked back to my desk, um, doing the stuff that I normally do, and then my bosses come to me and are like, did you do such and such and such? I'm like, yeah, I guess. But um, I guess I probably partly bring that up um, to kind of show like it happens. Like situations like that happen. In other words, whether it's something that's our fault, my fault, something inside of our control, something outside of our control, regardless of like what the catalyst is for the situation, things like that happen. So at that point, it's um, like what do you do? Um, because at that point, like it's kind of double. Like one, their network is down, and two, um, um, the fingers are all going to be pointing at me. So anyway, my bosses come to me and are kind of like, "Did you do something?" Da, 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 da. So I took him to where I made change, and showed him what I did. Um, and um, yes, they showed me what I did wrong. Which one of the things that I have realized um, is kind of a marker for people who are going to be successful. And this you can take this as personal, um, kind of personal business, whatever, like personal, or personal business, or um, kind of guidance in terms of looking for employees. But one of the markers that I've seen is one of the most telling in terms of like who's going to be productive, who's going to work out, who's going to be a good fit in terms of most positions, higher level positions, especially higher level positions. Because, in other words, positions where there's going to be some level in which you want people to make decisions is like what they do when things get bad. In other words, is this someone who is prone to panic when things don't go a certain way? Um, if so, that's probably not somebody you want in any kind of leadership position. Um, because like by now, like we all know, like research shows, like when you get in a tight spot when people panic, like the use of your faculties, your mental faculties, um, is mostly diminished. Um, you don't have proper use of like all of your mental faculties, and if you if you want to test, like just wait until you get into a situation or think about or just wait until you get into a situation where um you feel anxious, um and then like when you're in that, try to make it a point to pull yourself back. um and one of the ways I do that is I talked about it on on another episode of this, is by just showing gratitude. In other words, so in that moment, that's a good time to just take some time to just write out some things that you're thankful for. I do that. For me, it's a practice every morning. 6 things I'm thankful for every morning. Um, it just helps to turn something, um, shift focus, shift, um, yeah, shift your, like, what you're focused on. Um, Effectively, it shifts what has control of you. Um, but anyway, that's kind of a little practical thing of like how to shift that. But in other words, if you take the time to kind of pull yourself back out of the the anxiousness, the anxious feelings, um the propensity to panic, and then like once you pull yourself back, then try to see, okay, what kind of solutions can I possibly come up with to this situation, and just see how much more creative you can be in that space than you were. Because obviously you can try before to see, okay, what can I do? And then in other words, once you pull yourself back, you can see like how many more ideas can come up. um and that's the thing. It's like that thing of like negativity. um it's hard for things to grow, and it's hard for things to grow in negative environments. um which when we give in to panic, when we give in to, um yes, yeah, the panic, the, um I guess, anxiety, feelings of that, like the whole um rhetoric of doom and gloom, like this is the end, all the messages that come with that. When given to those, um it's it makes it way harder. It makes it way harder to produce anything, um let alone to like run an organization or a company, um or a department or whatever that's gonna like be the best. Like if you're in that realm of you want to be the best, you want to produce, and frankly, like maybe I'm biased at this point. Um, I I've been sold on the idea that if you're gonna be in business, then you need to be the best. Um, I know that sounds a little strange for some people, because it's like, how can you be better than, I don't know, maybe in my case, Microsoft or Google or whatever? But it's kind of easy, yeah, from the perspective of there are some markets when you focus, like some markets, and we're talking a lot about focus today, some markets that if you, or that these larger companies are too big to focus on. And so if you can offer a product or service that is tailored for a specific market that other companies are too big or too otherwise focused to like deliver, then like you have a business, you have product, you have the opportunity to be the best. Um, in other words, this is not about being the biggest; it's about being the best. Um, like you're gonna be, if you want to be the biggest, that's fine too, but it's a lot easier to be the best, and maybe the biggest will follow, maybe. But anyway, so I'm a big fan of, um, if you're gonna do it, be the best. So I don't then the thing with that is I don't see the possibility of being the best without like having this thing down pat. This whole concept of how do we respond in times of crises, when things absolutely go wrong. So I want to just kind of pick up, or at least lay out a couple of little kind of practical things in here. And I gave the one about taking the time to pull yourself back. And that's a valid one. And at the same time, I do want to give some more practical steps for like what to do in situations like this. Because, in other words, these come up. One, they come up, and two, like you can never plan them. You just can't. So being prepared ahead of time is really the only solution. In other words, having a strategy ahead of time of like, what do I do in these situations? Which one of the good things to do, and right now I'm working with my with my son on this, with his propensity to panic at times. But one of the things to do is practice it when like the small uh, crises show up. Um, and part of it is good practice actually, because part of it is being aware. First of all, being aware of when situations like that show up, which is critical. Like if you're not even aware of the situation until like you've kicked the cat and the dog and everybody else too, um, then that's the first thing really to practice is becoming aware of becoming aware of when it starts, like of where you are, what's going on, what are the um what are the threats, in other words, what's got you up at arms. um so in other words, that's really the first thing to practice, which is good to practice again with minor stuff like, I don't know, somebody did um your meal wrong, or in other words, somebody got your order wrong, if that's what floats your boat or doesn't float your boat, whatever. um or like in business, like one of your employees does something wrong. um there's like there are multiple things. So in other words, when the little small things happen, those are the times to start practicing. So one of the things that you can practice, one of the first things that I really like to do is ask the question, effectively present the question, like, what is what's the real threat in the situation? Um, so part of the problem when we get in uh, situations where things don't work, um, part of the problem is when we get in these situations where things go wrong is like, first of all, one of the biggest things that happens is we start feeling a lot of times we start feeling overwhelmed, as in like it's kind of like a pile on. In other words, usually, and I mean almost most of the time, there's really one core problem. Most of the time it's just one core problem. Don't get me wrong, these days things are getting a little more complex, so there might be two or three, but most of the time it's one core problem. But it feels like this and this and this and this and this and this. In other words, pile on. Um, so the first thing I really like to do is ask that question, like, what's the real threat? What's the real problem here? And it might take some time. Like this is where the practice comes in. Because it might take some time to really like sort out all the noise, all the, well, if this happens, it might happen, and this might happen, and this might. In other words, it might take some time to sort all that out. It's like you can think of it. I'll give you a little visual. You may like it, you may not. If you don't, you may you might not be able to get rid of it. But anyway, uh, think of it as yeah. Think of it as a sewer pipe um, that burst or it got broken, whatever. Um, and there's a ton of crap on it. Um, on top of it, like it's buried under a ton of crap. Um, ultimately, like the crap in itself is not the problem. Like the broken sewer pipe is. But like if you spend all your time trying to focus on what to do, that is, what to do ultimately. In other words, you're trying to find out a super duper plan for like getting rid of the amount of crap that gets pumped out of this broken sewer pipe. Like if that's what you spend your time and focus and energy on, like you're wasting time that you could be using to like solve the actual problem, which is the broken pipe. So at that point, like I said, it may take some time, but like it's worth it. Whatever it takes to shovel it off, fix the real issue, um, and that way you're not spending extra resources, time, emotional energy, money, um, trying to fix, trying to maintain, better yet, yeah, trying to maintain your problems, um, manage problems that you could actually fix. Yeah, because effectively that's the difference between, um, yeah, that's the difference between like fixed costs, that is something you pay a fixed price for, versus something that something that you pay like an ongoing price for. And like if you're in business, like accountants, like financial people, like most people know the difference between having to pay a one-time cost versus like repeating costs over and over and over and over. Um, in business, like the one-time cost is definitely preferred. Um, so yeah, in other words, don't turn the one-time cost of I need to clear off this crap into an ongoing cost when it's not. In other words, that's not the actual problem. Clear that off, fix the real problem, and then that's something you don't have to deal with on an ongoing basis. So yeah, clearing the crap to fix the real problem. Again, what's the real threat is the first question. Next question I would say I usually like to do is like, um, well, it's kind of the same. It's kind of the same. Um, I'll put it a different way though. Um, effectively, the goal in all of this is getting down to like what's real. Like these days, if we want to talk about media, and not necessarily from a like a super. political standpoint. But if you want to talk about media, um, there is so much, um, like even like from traditional media to like social to literally what you hear from people you talk to. There's so much noise out there, um, which makes it really hard to get down to like what's real, um, what's firm, what's solid, um, and so effectively when a lot of times when things get closer to crisis mode, when things go wrong, things aren't working the way they need to be working. This is the time where having like all of the noise and stuff going on is particularly detrimental. Um, because effectively it's harder to find. It just makes it that much more harder to find. In other words, you're already in a crisis. It makes it that much more harder to find like what's really going on. What should I really be focused on? Um, so the picture here is focus. Like I said, we're talking a lot about focus today, and frankly, that winds up like that is the it's the focus. Focus is the focus. Focus is the focus. Um, yeah, focus is the focus. Um, it is the way that we can, in tough situations, like escape. Yeah, escape. It's a decent word. Um, escape that situation um, without panicking. Um, yeah, without losing because we panicked. Um, yeah. So yeah, that's all I have for this one. Um, this is always fun. Um, this is always fun. Um, yeah, and I always like when it's time to end. It's like I've got three or four or five maybe different more ways I could go, but it's like yeah, they're probably not gonna probably won't have enough time. But anyway, um, yeah, I always enjoy being able to do this, and like when you catch this, definitely leave a comment. Yeah, let me know what you got out of it, what worked for you. Um, yeah, situations that you've been in, because ultimately, like the goal for this is to help you succeed more in building the business that you're building, building the life that you're building. Um, yeah, to do more with what you already have. So anyway, that's all I have. Bye.